1999's The Mummy was destined to be at least a contender for the best mummy movie ever, namely because it had a budget that was bigger than James Charles's butthole, which, let's face it, is disgustingly large.
Yep.
Hashtag, the fuck, bro? Some of that big ass culo.
Fix that shit.
Anyway, we all know that budget doesn't mean quality. But in the case of mummy movies, it was always like kind of a necessity, man. I mean, you're going with the Egyptian vibe. You got a damn undead dude shuffling around.
Yep.
Maybe some minions. Something's got to happen in a mummy movie. And historically speaking, Nathan never happened in mummy movies. Especially that first Universal movie. Look, man, we love us some Boris Karloff. Of course, we love us some classic Universal monsters. And there's nothing wrong with a paced and methodical movie. But the fact is, they had jack shit as far as money goes. So they just gave us an old guy shuffling around the mortal coil and thought that was cool. It wasn't. It was fucking boring as shit. Look, man, and I always tout my attention span, but that motherfucker tested it, and it's a short-ass movie. It's not great.
No.
In fact, of the Universal Mummy movies, later I would be kind of like, all right, that one's fine. With a gimpy hand one. I forgot his name, Karras. That was about the only time I was like, all right, that's a decent mummy movie, I guess. It wasn't, but, whatever. Then came the Hammer movies, which admittedly, I can't remember if it was the first one or one of the later ones, but pretty good. You know what I'm saying? But that's it. Mummy movies historically suck big dinglings.
Yeah.
Or big James Charles culos. You know what I'm saying? Either or, they're losing. So when 1999's The Mummy came along, it was like... it was a relief. We finally had a cool-ass mummy movie. The thing is, it wasn't like just a sold-out package. Like, it wasn't just like, we're giving you a mummy movie. No, it was also an adventure movie. It was a kind of a comedy. And there was a big-budget summer spectacle as well. So it was a lot of things in one.
Yeah.
It was a blast. Now, this is one of your favorites.
Had Brendan Fraser in it?
Brendan Fraser... arguably, this is Brendan Fraser's best movie. I mean, Gods and Monsters is a better movie, but nobody saw that shit because nobody wants to see Ian McKellen seduce fucking Brendan Fraser. Nobody on earth, except Clive Barker, who produced it.
And me, apparently.
Yeah, apparently. So, yeah, man, I'd venture to say this is probably the role that at least is most memorable to people. Yeah. When it comes to the Phrase-meister, a.k.a. Fraserama, yes. And this movie was brought to us by Stephen Sommers, who we were already kind of fans of. At least I was. I don't know if you were.
I was too young.
I liked the Jungle Book offering that he made.
I never saw that.
Enjoyed that quite a bit, and I really, really, really loved Deep Rising, which is still a very fun movie.
It was a treat.
Yeah. Williams, that is. Thankfully not Remo Williams. Oh. A reference nobody's going to get. And even if they did, Fushi. Anyway, so Stephen Sommers here. Again, arguably, this is possibly the best movie he's made in his career. Because Stephen Sommers is a guy that once he got into the big budgets, he overindulged too much. Yeah. Case in point, The Mummy Returns, which is... We're going to talk about that sometime later, but it's a ham sandwich that's been out in the sun for too long, and you eat it, and it gives you the shits.
Yeah, because it definitely had mayonnaise in there.
Yeah, that's that movie.
Yeah.
I guess it had better effects sometimes.
Sometimes.
And sometimes it had worse effects than this one.
The Rock.
Damn, that Scorpion King was... total turds. Yep. Anyway, he overindulged in that to the point where the movie was just utter nonsense and really a major step down from the first one. And he wanted to make movies like Van Helsing, which didn't really garner any love from anybody. I enjoy it. It's stupid, overindulgent shit.
It's got huge jacked man in it.
Yeah, it's got huge jacked man in it, so that's a thing. And it's fucking garbage, but it's way better than Mummy Returns. But again, overindulgent mess. And G.I. Joe, Rise of Cobra, again, an overindulgent fucking mess. he never really quite reached his standards again. And it's ironic that it was until Odd Thomas, which had a drastically smaller budget, that he kind of went back to very entertaining pictures. So yeah, this easily has been his best movie, or at least to most people his best movie. A very entertaining piece, a big summer blockbuster, back in the tradition. I would say that this was one of the last like summer blockbusters that was, almost across the board beloved. There was no factions of people fighting about its validity or anything.
Everyone was a Phrasite.
Yeah, everybody pretty much enjoyed this movie. Now let's talk about the elephant in the room besides us, and that is the special effects in this movie. Now this is a spectacle, and ILM did the bulk of the effects for this movie. ILM, of course, being Industrial Light and Magic, one of the leading, if not the leading, effects houses when it came to CGI stuff. Also, in my opinion, especially at the time, one of the worst effects houses. Don't get me wrong, of course, no other effects house had the capabilities of ILM, but they had such sway and power when it came to CGI effects that sometimes they overdid it to the point where they were pushed. Maybe they were trying to push boundaries, but it was like, dude, you haven't conquered this boundary yet, so it doesn't look good. So here's the catch with The Mummy. Even back then, some of the effects did not look good. You know what I'm saying? And nowadays, some of them look downright god-awful. But I argue that this movie is so fun that you can actually overlook that. There's some physical effects movies that have some god-awful physical effects, and you can overlook it because the movie's fun or good or whatever. I think this is one of those where the CGI, yes, it stinks like a fucking sphinx, literally, but it's such a fun time that you don't give a fuck. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Well, where are you on that? Besides stinking like a sphinx, clearly.
I don't think it's as bad as you did, apparently. But yeah, there's some effects that are pretty, especially seeing it on a 4K TV, that are pretty like bad.
Yeah, there's some atrocious effects.
Weirdly enough, the ones that stood out the most to me were like the backdrops. Like the environment effects.
Right.
Very, very blurry and then just fake looking. I can live with the freaking fake ass mummy, even though its lips are like, dude, chill out with the lip movement. No one moves their lips that much. But yeah, there's some that are pretty bad.
Yeah.
Upon reviewing.
Now, there's a certain charm to the way the effects are done that it's a very stylistic approach to some of the stuff that again helps you kind of tide over the hit or miss effects. And don't get me wrong, there's some effects in this that still work. I think they're in the minimum, though. And again, that's the thought that I had back then, but it didn't ever stop me from enjoying this movie, and it still doesn't. Which just speaks to how fun and quality, kind of summer blockbuster style movie this is. Okay, so we get that out of the fucking way. Let's talk about this flick in full. Give me something good or bad that you like about this flick or hate about it.
I like my boy Brendan Fraser. He's a pretty likable little guy. He's like if Indiana Jones wasn't a dick.
Yeah, there's the undeniable influence of Indiana Jones in this movie. I guess that's another elephant in the room, right?
Yeah.
Not much was made about it back then. In fact, people kind of liked the ode, the little tip of the hat.
It had been several years.
Yeah, it had been several years, and not many years after that, we'd get a shitty Indiana Jones movie, so people were like probably still liking that. I don't know how this would tide over nowadays. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? I don't know how the super touchy people that don't get what an homage is would go on it now. Would they tear this down? Possibly. But I know back then they were vibing on it. I certainly was vibing on it. It's a cool little, it certainly filled a gap that people were asking for.
I want to hang out with them. And I will say I saw this like 5 years ago, maybe more at this point. By the way, the effects were not as bad back then as I remembered them, or they were better than I remember them being better. Yeah. Anyway, Back then I was kind of like, yep, lost my train of thought. And then today I'm like, yep, lost my train of thought.
You were talking about Brendan Fraser being a cool guy that you want to hang out with.
Brendan Fraser's a cool little guy. And back then when I saw the movies again, he was one of the few things that remained cool in the second one. He's just a likable guy.
Yeah, he's just such a likable dude. He's so likable that it took a long while for his shitty career decisions to catch up to him. You know, people still liked him. People still do like him.
Yeah.
They just think his movies sucked for a long time, which they had, and they have. So, he's a very likable character, and he's an actor. But you know, he's a very likable character. Rick O'Connell is a funny guy. He's literally like a new Indiana Jones style character. So that's cool. Yeah, I agree with that. Rachel Weisz plays Evie here, his lady, damsel in distress of sorts, his leading lady, and she also came back for part 2, and there was such a drastic change in the character from part 1 to 2 that I was like, I kind of didn't like her in part 2.
Damn.
Yeah, it's kind of weird, but I really like her character in this. You know, she's cute, for lack of better words, charming. She provides a good. She gives a good contrast to O'Connell's more kind of rough character. I really like that. Like this cat that plays her brother. I forgot his fucking name.
Octavio. Octavio.
According to you, yeah.
I do have a negative when it comes to the casting.
Okay.
Her eyebrows are weird.
Okay, I can roll with that.
Right?
I'd lick them. You know, Daniel Craig definitely licks them.
Oh, he's married to her?
Oh yeah, he's boning.
Damn,
hard,
homie.
She's getting that 007, if you know what I mean.
I honestly didn't remember her eyebrows being weird, and I was kind of distracted by them this time.
Really?
I was like, damn, them shits is super thin.
You know what's not weird?
Wafer thin, even.
Oh yeah, is that what they are?
Yeah.
Wafer thin?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Anyway.
I'll have to be on the lookout for brows next time, I guess.
Dude, as long as you have a good calf and a good brow, like you got me.
So that unibrow chick's not gonna do anything for you.
It's gotta be
she
good.
got great calves though.
Oh damn! Well, it's got.
We're getting off the topic here, but the point is,
dude.
The cast overall is pretty damn good. We got Kevin J. O'Connor, who is kind of a Stephen Sommers frequent player, if you will, and playing Benny, the duplicitous, backstabbing Benny. Hideous teeth.
Yep.
So that's cool. It's always weird to see him. He's kind of like a character actor that's gone unsung.
Yeah.
A little bit, you know. Of course, you know, it's like almost every time, like you didn't even realize he was Swan in Lord of Illusions.
Yeah, somehow.
He's kind of that guy that just sneaks by and really, like I said, unsung. So anyway, he's pretty cool to see here. Of course, we have to, give props to Arnold Vosloo, who plays the mummy with a certain menace that is palpable despite kind of like the lighthearted nature of the movie.
He's got a little swag. Yeah,
there's something about him that speaks ominous things. He's got the body language down for sure. The thing is, well, first of all, Arnold Vosloo just kind of fucking disappeared, didn't he?
Yeah, big time.
I mean, he was in some other Stephen Sommers movies. So that's the thing. He was Zardan in fucking G.I. Joe.
Yeah,
cool.
That was a good movie. G.I. Joe, as a fun fact, that's not fun at all, was one of the earliest times I can remember hating myself in the theater.
That bad, huh?
Yes, it was. I know you had some fun with it, but I was miserable, dude.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. It's fucking garbage, but, it's kind of like the Van Helsing thing. I was like, it's crap, but I enjoyed the crap. But I get it, it's fucking crap. But Vosloo's career never ever went anywhere besides these movies. Really, I mean, he's virtually unheard of. He unfortunately is now in like TV roles, and that's kind of a shame because he's a pretty cool guy and he never really got to stretch, out in his element or show us his real chops on the big screen. So a shame. Same with Oded Fair, who plays Ardeth Bay, the leader of the Magi. He was in Deuce Bigelow, Male Gigolo, so there that went. Fushi.
That was a good movie.
fuck, man.
A perfect 10.
Saw it in the theater, dude.
Why?
Damn, man.
You had the tape and the DVD. No, you had the DVD.
No, I had the tape, fool. I didn't have the DVD, man.
Whatever.
I wasn't gonna go that low.
you
Look,
own-
the
you
tape
own-
was $1.
You own Deuce.
I owned Deuce Bigelow, Mo Gigolo, and I hated it, and I still owned it. Anyway, whatever. The fucking Oded Fair never went anywhere. Again, a shame. But all in all, cast is very good. Lots of fun supporting characters. I like kind of like the Bram Stoker's Dracula troupe of other adventures that's following in this thing. That's pretty cool, and it makes for a really a fun time as far as cannon fodder goes for the Mummy to dispose of. Now, it's worth to note that I don't know if they ever filmed anything that was there in the original script or not. But in the novelization, there was a lot more mummy action. And there's a lot of fucking mummy action in this. I'm just saying there was more mummy action. Most memorably for me, I should say, was they showed all the 9 plagues being set loose. And there was a more of a apocalyptic feel to the Mummy Rising, which is I mean, they say that in the movie. It's in the dialogue, it's in the implication, but you got a scaled feeling of the power of the mummy, which I thought would have been really cool, because that's kind of like the way Vosloo played it, like this all-powerful being. So it would have been really neat to see that, but we didn't get the full scale of that. But what we got there is tons of mummy fun.
Funny.
Hit me something.
I do like that, since you mentioned it, I do like that sequence where with the plagues happening.
Mm-hmm.
I remember as a kid, I was like, that's freaking cool. Especially the one where like the hail's hitting and everybody's just kind of like in chaos and shit. Pretty rad feeling.
I gotta take a negative out right now. And it's that, and it kind of goes hand in hand with the, hit or miss effects. It's the big mouth syndrome.
Dude.
The mummy and several of his minions do this scream thing where their mouth or face and jaw elongates into a big maw.
Yeah.
And I don't know if this was done before, but I know that after it was in this movie and then The Mummy Returns, that shit showed up in so many horror movies.
This was the first time I remember seeing it.
Yeah, me too.
And yeah, like after Mummy Returns especially, it was everywhere.
It was everywhere, man.
Down to like the early 2010s, maybe? Like that Priest movie had that shit.
Priest, Legion. There was a lot of horror movies that
Legion,
had
sorry.
that, like a big open maw thing, and I was like, damn, Mummy, why'd you do this?
I Am Legend.
It has never looked, it's never looked good. Didn't look good then. Still doesn't look good. It's a thing that's got to stop. The big mummy maw.
Yeah,
just saying.
The big mummy maw. I think it looks fine at certain times. Like when he's like half messed up and he's doing the mouth scream, it looks fine in the movie. It looks horrid when he's got full skin back. Yes. And he opens it and you're like, oh no, the skin is like struggling to...
Atrocious, man.
It just looks like a warp brush.
I think we also got to point out that there's a lot of, as we said, there is some comedic elements to this. In fact, there's a lot of comedic elements to this, so much so that some would be inclined maybe to call it a straight-up comedy. But I'd say it's a little bit on the Ghostbusters side of things, Not in terms of quality, but in terms of the way it balances the horror with the comedy. Maybe a little bit more horror heavy. I don't know, but I'd say it's on par with that because it takes its horror at least seriously, and it does have that larger scale feel to something going on, in terms of the mummy's powers and all that stuff. So that's cool, but I gotta say that it is hard to pull off that balance, and this movie does it exceptionally well. All the actors have some great comedic timing, and they pull off. I don't think there's a gag that I didn't like in the movie. There's some that, I've seen it a few thousand times by now, so they're not as funny as the first time. But it's still a very enjoyable, good time to be had when it comes to the comedy stuff. It's aged well in that respect. Yeah. So that's important. Maybe it helps that it wasn't, a modern piece. It wasn't set in modern times. Otherwise, it'd be riddled with pop culture references that would age horribly. So maybe that helps. I don't know, but, the comedy aged very well. Give me something.
I like how the movie seems to feel like it has several phases.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like here's the plague phase. You know, here's what I mean. I don't know. I had to explain
Yeah,
it.
that specific, but yeah, I know
Yep.
what you mean.
Humanity. So yeah, I like that. I always like that it feels unique from part to part. You know.
Yeah, it definitely has a 3-act build up, you
Yeah.
know. And I gotta say, also on the positive, this is one of my favorite intros to a movie. You know, it's simple, but it lays the groundwork so well
Yeah.
that you're like, all right, I'm immersed in this world already, despite how awful these effects are. You know, we're gonna be legit good. I can't explain it. It's good bad effects.
Yeah.
They're bad,
It's odd,
but they're good bad.
Because like when you see the Mummy when it comes out, it's super fake,
Mega fake.
insanely fake.
In fact, why have a physical effect mummy that's a completely different color, then have a CGI mummy that's a completely different color? Hashtag Three Musketeers nougat, and then have a third suit mummy that occasionally shows up, like namely in body part sequences, that's like a completely different texture and color. Also, like just have one mummy, just make them all CGI or all physical or whatever.
It is odd, and the effect is pretty bad, especially in the mouth region.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of work that you can tell. Like it's super detailed. It's just the animation isn't there.
The
and-
color grading is
the color
bad.
is off.
Yeah, again,
So
nougat.
it's odd. It's an odd mix, especially with the bugs. Like the bugs look okay, but
Make no mistake, nothing looks real.
yeah, nothing looks real.
Effects wise, but again, it's an inexplicable, like acceptable bad.
Yeah, you're like, all right.
Maybe it's the I can't say it's the fact that you know that there's a lot of money was spent on it or not. It's not that. It's definitely not that. It's just some. I don't know. I don't know what it is. It's a Cthulhu. It's a Lovecraftian concept.
Yeah,
My mind can't grasp it why, but it's acceptable.
I do think something that we can be more positive about is the kind of set work and the props.
Yeah.
Pretty cool looking.
Yeah, some good stuff there, man. It definitely gives you, at least in terms of how we imagine Egypt to be,
Yeah.
it gives you that feeling. So well done there.
And this was definitely before the time where everything was just green screen. So
Yeah.
you do kind of have to appreciate the fact that there's massive areas that they built for like one scene.
Yeah, they
You're
didn't
like, "Damn,
George
homie."
Lucas everything.
Yeah.
So that's cool, pretty cool. I also like the sound. I'm sorry, the score in this. A lot of, especially the mummy cues or like horror cues that have that heavy, ominous brass to it. That's pretty cool.
Pretty
I
cool.
really like that. I like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, man. Overall, just a fun through and through adventure. You know, it's proof that you can have a PG-13 horror movie
Yeah.
that's still a horror movie that doesn't need to be gory and weird and you know, highly offensive. It could just be what it
Fun.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Although I could see this, like the mood of the movie changing dramatically if it was a lot gorier. So I mean, that's not necessarily to say that would benefit it at all to be an R rating. So yeah, man. But just again, proof positive you can have a good PG-13 horror movie.
And I think it's worthy to mention that the remake of this stinker.
Yeah, the remake, which arguably was not a remake. Apparently, there was some acknowledgement. I mean, there was, not apparently. There was some acknowledgement to that this may have happened in the past. This particular movie may have happened in the past in the continuity of the new
Reboot,
Mummy movie.
then.
Yeah, but suffice it to say that aside from, what's her name? Sophia Botella,
Yeah.
I think, as the Mummy, and my boy Russ as Hyde. That movie is fucking garbage. We did a review of it. Check it out. It's, I don't know what channel it is, either this one or TDS, but it was not good.
Bad.
It was fucking bad. And it would have suited them so well to make
Yeah.
just a fourth Mummy movie. I know the third one wasn't received very well, which boggles my mind because the third one in this series I prefer way, way, way more than the second one, which is fucking absolute trash fire
Second one was
garbage.
Crap, yeah.
I really like the third one. It's a fun time. It's a different approach to a mummy. And they set up what I wanted all along at the end, which is an Aztec mummy or a Mayan mummy or an Incan mummy. They set that up at the end, and then we don't get a fucking fourth one. Instead, we get Tom Cruise screaming into the void.
Dude, that
Shit!
Yeah.
Pissed me off, that movie did. Not because I didn't get my Aztec mummy movie, but because the fucking movie sucked.
Yes, terrible.
Anyway, watch that video for that. We'll be talking about the rest of the series, including the atrocious part 2. In the meantime, hit me with your final thoughts on this and a score on a scale of 1 to 10 relative to films of its type. And give it to me.
Admittedly, this is one of my stroking off points as a kid. Brendan Fraser is a hottie.
Damn, man.
So maybe I'm gonna be a little high, but I do think the fun factor is there, unlike the new Mummy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it has fun and knows that the concept of a mummy movie is stupid, so it just kind of has fun with it.
Yeah.
Plus, it is kind of impressive for the time. You know, it's this big movie, big effects movie that's just common every day now, but back then it was kind of impressive. At least I remember being impressed when I was a kid.
They kind of had meaning back then.
Yeah.
They've kind of lost their meaning, the effects movies. But
Yeah.
I mean, not all of them, but most.
They're rarer,
Yeah.
harder to do. So yeah,
There are more of them, but they're rarer to capture the spirit of a good effects
Yeah.
movie.
so yeah, it's cool, and we basically got like a fourth good Indiana Jones movie.
Yeah.
That actually is before all the indie movies, so that's cool. Erase the memory of Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
Shit.
So I'll give it like an 8.5 because I do have to take some points away because some of them effects look like feasts, and admittedly it's gonna be a little high because you know, my nostalgia for it.
I'm inclined to mirror that, but I'm gonna have to not. If I'm gonna be level-headed and fair, I have to give it a 7, which is still pretty high. Now, don't get me wrong. Like if I was just going on the pure fun, this is a high score, like a 8 or a 9, because it's a fun fucking movie. But I can't deny that these effects, which are in every single fucking scene of this movie, are not the greatest. But again, I stress they don't take fun away from the movie, so it's that weird place that you have to kind of reside in. So anyway, highly recommend it.
Yeah, this is a 20-year movie.
It's
at
fucking
this point.
fun, dude. It's a fun best mummy movie ever. Period.
Yeah,
Up to this
sadly.
point, anyway. You know what I'm saying? The best mummy movie. Granted, the competition is not great.
Yeah,
Mummy movies historically lick, but that's the one that gets the crown. So there you go, man. Let us know what you think about this flick in the comments down below if you've seen it, which I'm sure you have. And if you haven't, you must be newborn. So what the hell are you doing on this channel? Anyway, subscribe anyway. We need that fetus crowd.
toe knife.
Toe knife. Anyway, we're out.